I'm James,
I'm Philly.
and we're the co-founders of Outer Voice.
Thank you guys so much for coming today.
Thank
We're
you.
so honored to meet you. I feel like I've known of you guys for a long time now.
Likewise.
So
Same on our
I'm
side.
really excited to meet you, talk to you, and
Absolutely.
connect. Thank you for coming out. Like, they came from Chicago and Boston.
Yes.
So we're very, very fortunate
Worth the
to have
flight.
them.
Worth the flight.
Okay, so I wanted to just talk about the Brown Artist of Today.
Yeah.
Right? That's this upcoming issue.
Right.
And we're really focusing on like the current talent to kind of prove multiple points. I was inspired recently by the Romantics again, because they had this whole segment about nepotism, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so just like talking about how like, oh, we've had the most new people that we've ever had, but then the community itself is still so divided. So it's kind of like investigating that and like talking about the Brown Artists of Today, because you guys see so many,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you got your company started and like where you're at right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, for us, we like to say it was a combination of lifelong passion, but then unique opportunity. And I think you often see that combination, right? You can want to do something, but not have the means or the door to walk through. But for us, it starts with us being artists ourselves. We started in classical piano, then picked up guitar, vocals, started writing music. I think maybe when I was around 14, he was around 11, 3 years between us as brothers. And we just started to get good at it. He would produce, I'd write the lyrics, we'd do the melodies together, and it was something we really, really loved. But for a combination of, I think, what we saw in media and in mainstream music, a combination of what our culture and what we might hear at home, and a variety of factors, I don't think we were thinking about it professionally. Fast forward to that unique way and opportunity, in the fall of 2019, I was part of this viral video that landed in front of the chief marketing officer of Converse. And he saw something in me, then in us, the brand really did. And 18 months later, in June of 2021, they were helping us launch a South Asian American record label to the world. And I think that validation from a mainstream player like that, from people outside of our community, and them hearing our mission around representation and wanting to build more of an infrastructure in music for the artists of today, the Brown artists of today, meant so much, and it helped us so much, and we just we ran with it from there.
Yeah, because I think for us growing up in the suburb of Chicago, it was a great upbringing, but it was a very Caucasian suburb. So we often felt like outsiders in our own community a little bit. So we never, we would feel like outsider. We wouldn't have too much of a home in our community. Then we would come to our, back home after school. We'd turn on the TV. We didn't even see anyone that looked like us on the TV. So it felt like everywhere, every outlet we had, everywhere we looked, there weren't really anyone that looked like us. So, I think back to my high school days, middle school, my favorite thing in the world was playing music, writing songs, just singing, just being at the piano and singing. But honestly, I never gave it a thought if this was something that I could actually do. I think a big reason for that is not seeing any example in front of us. And so it truly meant so much when we went to Converse and we had the meeting that we point to as kind of the ignition, the start of what started Outer Voice Records and then into media and just the overall company. The main piece of advice that they gave us was, your culture is unique. Lean into it. When I felt like spent a lot of our lives shying away from it, trying to blend in just with American culture, not put.
It's a strength, not a weakness.
Exactly. Exactly. We finally at that point
change.
Decided, lean into it. This is your strength. This is what's going to bring you forward.
Yeah. So why a record company? Because I think like with like all the different things that you explained so far, like you could take this in any direction. So like what pointed you to a record label?
So I think one was our genuine first creative identity as music artists. So when we thought about these underrepresented areas for our community, that's where our mind went first. But I think it was also because we felt there's such a gap in support for our community in music specifically. I think even today you see some strides really being made in film and TV and other creative areas, but I think music still is kind of holding out a little bit. And we believe that the more infrastructure of support that there can be for our artists, the better the shot at making it and really creating some proper success.
Yeah, we like to say the line that we firmly believe our community doesn't lack the talent, it just lacks the platform. So that was the ignition of where we came in to support artists. We had seen so many successful brown artists on TikTok, whether it was singing covers or singing original pieces, and we knew that everyone was out there. There just wasn't a central hub really gathering all that talent and growing it. So I think that combined with us being artists ourselves, that was the start.
So maybe I'm projecting. There's a high chance I'm projecting.
Let's see. Try.
So when I started the magazine and like started this community, right? A lot of the reason why I like prioritize community in like my 20s now is because I didn't have like many people around me that were like-minded, and so I was like myself a super lonely kid. Like I just, and it was a lot by choice too, right? Like I would isolate myself on purpose and push a lot of people away just because I was like, you don't get me. And so like I just felt like I didn't want, like I just was like, in my head I was justifying it as like, oh, I don't want fake friends, but really I was just closed off. Like my heart was just closed to friendships.
So relatable.
So much, that resonates too much.
Right? With like the whole record label and you kind of wanting to build a community, it kind of reflects a lot of like maybe what you guys went through. Like, do you kind of want to talk about your mental health?
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about that.
Yeah, my personal journey, I know there's some similarities here. My personal journey with mental health has been very interesting. I think first recognizing what mental health is, right? That's something that we're not often encouraged in our community to even put an importance on. But after that, just going up and down, I point to one moment specifically where my mental health, I think, deteriorated quite a bit, being junior year of high school, an already stressful time. But specifically, growing up, right in that suburb of Chicago, it was pretty small. We were in the same house pretty much our entire life. We went from the elementary public school to the middle school to the high school. It was
same group of people.
Same group of people. Same exact group of people. And so for me, I had a friend group that started from first grade, second grade. We moved through every grade, every school together, until one day junior year where quite literally overnight kind of just disappeared. And I was left just feeling, I was very confused, first of all, and then it just came a time where I needed to reconcile and kind of move forward with it. But it's one of those situations where it was almost worse because there wasn't any falling out, there wasn't a fight that I could point to and be like, oh, that's why that we're no longer friends, right? It was just something, to this day, I still don't know what happened. It's like just no closure at all. I still don't know, it's just, it just happened, and I was left there, right? And so that was a huge switch, going from, going out every Friday, every Saturday, going to restaurants, whatever, to just being at home, eating on the couch and watching TV every weekend. That was my idea of free time. So I think that's when it really started to take a turn. I just felt extreme loneliness. And it was one of those, it was one of those things where whenever I would be in school, I was very, it wasn't like I wasn't surrounded by people. I was liked, I was nice with everyone, very friendly with everyone at school. But then I'd go home, and even though I was surrounded by so many people, I didn't feel like I actually had anyone. I was still very lonely at the core.
So one of the things that I work with when I do like sessions for my participants, for my healing sessions, we always talk about like the idea of victim mentality and like the point where you realize like enough is enough. I want to change my life. I want to get back up there and like I want to do it all over again. And like you're not necessarily living with like the guilt and the shame anymore. You're ready to like see a change. Did you have that as part of your journey, or like what did that look like?
100%. I think that's a great point. I never even thought about it like that. But yeah, there were times, because coming off that junior year, I think there was a lot of issues I was having with self-esteem, just became very self-conscious about certain things. And what kind of picked it all up for me, I'm very religious. So I truly believe that everything comes in God's timing and that everything happens for a reason. So I guess one of the few good things that happened in that moment was that's actually when I first learned how to produce music. So it was kind of in that loneliness where I wasn't occupying my time with friends or doing anything else outside of school. I just self-taught how to be a producer. And honestly, that was kind of my therapy for a while, just learning how to produce, writing more songs, being at the piano 24/7 whenever I could. And that's what really, one, got me out of the rut that I was feeling, moved me into senior year where I started making more friends and just was much happier. But also really as we point to our artist journey, our business journey, kind of a kickstart to it all. With, I think back maybe without this moment, even though it seemed totally depressing at the time, perhaps without it, we wouldn't have been artists as Jam and Philly ourselves. Maybe we wouldn't have even launched anything outer voice related. We could be in completely different industries. So maybe that's, hindsight is 2020, but that's,
Yeah, I think for me, it's similar. I mean, there's so many things that resonate. Always being sociable, but never really feeling like I had my people. And it was funny, even in high school, both of us were, just very social around our class circles. We were both, the soccer captains, and, we had that sort of positioning in our school, and there might have been people who others might have even assumed was our squad. I think I always had that. I feel like I faked it well. I feel like others, an outsider, would have definitely seen me with lots of people. But when it came down to it, people I really felt close to, and I think I resonated to what you were saying about probably closing myself off, and I think telling myself that it was because of these people, but it was really my own closedness, But I think it was a long period of time where I felt very lonely and didn't feel like I really had, close relationships. And that, I think, informed how I went into college, because I really wanted that to change. I was super intentional about trying to find real people that, I could really identify with. And I found that in a few people. I found some of my closest friends early on, which I was really lucky to do, like beginning of freshman year. Still, in many cases, found myself without as many people as I wanted. I was in a couple relationships, and you know how a relationship is. When it ends, you're kind of left at square one, and you invested in someone and probably spent too much time just with that person. You weren't branching out and meeting other people, and then it crumbles, and it's,
It's a snowball.
And I think for me, my low point was probably pandemic. Like, I think maybe a lot of people, where I had just had an incredible, experience on campus, and then we had to leave. And so I felt like a whole sort of social circle that I was building immediately went away. I was in a particularly tough relationship at that point where it was straining other relationships I had in between, me and this person. It wasn't the healthiest thing anyway. So it was just a low point. So I say that 2020, was tough for sure. But then in 2021 was when we launched our company. And I think it really did play a role in taking me out of this present dark moment and focusing me forward and thinking about, how it's going to get so much brighter. We came together and started, I think, talking more again. There's maybe a few years there, and where we were in different places. I was at school, he was at home. So, maybe we weren't even in touch as much. And that changed with the pandemic. I came back, we were under the same roof. We started making all our plans for our music and our company, and everything started to look up, So I love that point. I think there's so much purpose in everything. And I do think that there was absolutely a silver lining in our own struggles.
Yeah. Again, it's so easy to say that now.
Oh my God,
when you're like in the moment, you're like,
easy.
fuck this,
Yeah.
this sucks, like everything is the worst.
100%.
So like, what would you, because it's easy for us to be like, oh well, life is looking really great, and it because it is,
Yeah.
right? But it's like the active effort
Yeah.
of making life great
Yeah.
is like that in between of the journey, and those are the days that don't look aesthetic, they don't look good. It's a lot of like hard work on yourself.
Yeah.
So like, what would you say to somebody that might be in the middle of that, that stage where they're trying to make things happen, they're trying to change their life, but then they just like are paralyzed by their own emotions?
Yeah. One thing I'd say is be patient with yourself. I think we talk so much about being kind and patient to others in our society, but be kind to yourself, and give yourself that grace. I remember periods where I was super self-critical in the midst of everything we just talked about. And I think that it starts there. And then I think slowly try and find relationships, because I think we're meant to help each other, whether it's your family, whether it's, your born family or your chosen family, find those people that you do feel like you can lean on. and that are going to be those people that pull you out of this dark place. Because I really think that community and relationship ultimately is such an antidote to a lot of these struggles.
Do you have anything to add, Billy?
That's not,
Yeah.
I mean, I completely agree, especially with that latter point, finding your circle, finding your people. I think it's just so important.
And it takes time.
It takes
It's
time.
got to be
It's
organic.
It's easy to shut off, especially when you go through if it's loneliness, depression, whatever. It's easy to think like, I don't want to put this burden on anyone else. I just want to stick to myself. But like you said, we're social people by nature, by evolution. We're meant to talk to others and share our feelings. So just knowing that, being vulnerable. I love what you said earlier. I think I definitely was the type that had, even in that friend group growing up, I was in the friend group, never too vulnerable. I still wouldn't say they knew me like that as a person.
Yeah.
So it took some figuring out. I think, have that time of reflection with yourself and that, that space, and just be more vulnerable. Don't be afraid to be open and put yourself out there to people.
Which is not encouraged in men.
Yeah.
Right? So
not
like,
at all.
you got to this point where you're able to talk about mental health the way you are, but like
Yeah.
a lot of men can't.
Yeah.
Right? We see that all the time where it's not encouraged to be the way that
Yeah.
you guys
Yeah.
are now. So like, how do you what do we do about that?
Yeah.
Well, first, I'd like to say, honestly, I've told a few close friends the story that I just told, but honestly, this is my first time ever saying this on camera to
Oh,
anyone
wow.
that I just met. So like,
Yeah.
it's not like I've had it figured out. I've been vulnerable. This is
Yeah.
kind of in that
So
journey
credit to your
of-
platform for giving men the
100%.
opportunity to do this.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Genuinely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that it's so hard. There's no easy answer. I feel like it goes back to relationships, I think, where I think when you're really close to someone, a marker that I use now, especially as I'm meeting new people a lot, and we're always meeting new circles now, is does this person truly have my best intentions, at heart and at mind? And I think that that's when you find people like that, you can be vulnerable, and because you feel safe and you feel open to sharing. And I think it's harder to find, than it is to say. But I think trying to find those people, that core, those are the ones that are going to allow you to open up and to express these things. Many of these things probably you're saying for the first time. And I think that there's a posture in people of empathy and receptiveness that I think we need to foster more among men, for sure. But even right now, right, you having that sensitivity around these issues and this background and inviting us to do this is, I think, something that now we'll be able to pass forward.
Yeah.
And I think that that's such a big part of this chain effect of kindness and empathy, right? And I think it fosters vulnerability.
I completely agree with that. I would take it another way. I think it has a lot to do with ego and pride as well, especially in our community.
Showing weakness.
One reason why I think it's so hard in our community for the men to be vulnerable is it's seen as a sign of weakness, right? You don't want to go to someone that you just met or even your lifelong friend and say that, business isn't doing too well, so I'm sad right now. I'm not doing the best in this area. We don't want to show any sort of weakness, right? We want to make it the facade that everything is put together, we're put together, everything's successful. So I think first realizing that it's okay to show, it's not even weakness. Everyone is gonna have ups and downs. Being going back to the word vulnerability, being able to show that vulnerability and express that. I think it's tough, but if we can have more men that invite that and aren't judgmental when that's being told to them, I think that we're one step closer.
In terms of men's mental health for you, was there a point where you felt like maybe, because you're obviously older, right? The older brother.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff
Yeah.
with being the oldest.
Sure.
And like I'm the oldest daughter, so it's a little bit like I empathize.
Yeah.
And like I joke like, oh, I laid this path out for you.
Yeah.
And we say
Yeah.
that as older
It's true.
siblings.
It's true. It's
So
true.
like, can you speak to maybe like, I mean, yes, mental health, but like, when did you guys like start talking to each other, like actually talking to each other, instead of just like treating? Because I treat my sister like sometimes a sibling, where it's like, oh, I don't want to talk to you, you're not gonna get it, you're too young.
Yeah.
But then now she's like 20. I think she's your age. She just graduated college. She and I are like really good friends.
Yeah.
You know, and like we were even roommates my senior year of college.
Yeah.
So like, talk a little bit about that if you can.
Yeah. I think it's interesting for us because we were always very close.
Yeah.
But close, the definition of close for us, I think, has evolved over time. We always did stuff together. You know, we'd play together, we'd play music together, we'd play sports together, we'd do so much, and that was forever. But I think then, when I went away, especially to college, I think and this has a lot to do, I think, with that community I was really looking for. I really dove into my campus life, and I was, less so, I think, in contact with, I don't think we were calling all that much, at least for pockets there. What really did it, I think, was the pandemic, actually, when another silver lining, when I had to come home. And so at that point, I'm a junior in college. He's a senior in high school when 2020 hits. And we had so much time to just really have conversations we hadn't had before. Sharing some of these things we shared earlier with one another for the first time about some of those difficult moments in our growing up. And just really connecting on, we were already friends, but it almost leveled up, you know? It went to a different, more emotional state, I'd say, during the pandemic.
I think that's actually, I never thought about it, but that's very true. Because even that kind of I think why my senior year was so good despite the pandemic was, one, having you back home. So the loneliness we were discussing before wasn't really a thing anymore, more or less, because I had someone, like a friend right there to talk about whatever. I would say, especially in my junior year, it was really, I think we did a good job for my freshman, sophomore, kind of right when you went to college. Then there was just 1 year where we started not talking as much, and maybe it could have even been me just like pulling away when I was going through that stuff, not wanting to really express that, because I never told my parents about any of that either. I didn't really just wanted to keep it to myself. But I think at that time, just coming out in 2020, being 18 years by that point, having lived a lot of a very similar life, like you said, we just started discussing more, and just reflecting. I think I never reflected too much on my upbringing, or at least anything negative about it. I tried to always view things in an optimistic way, but that doesn't mean that you can't, hold things accountable and show it for what they are. But once we started doing that, we just realized how many similarities there were, and it was a different type of communication that was fostered. We were just much more vulnerable, and then that's honestly how it started going. And we talked about our identity. That's when it started going into like, we don't even see our identity anywhere, not just in our community, but in the country. We don't really see that too much on the screen, right? I think all those conversations built on each other. So when it came time, we had the unique opportunity to launch Outer Voice. We kind of knew exactly what we wanted to do with that opportunity.
Wow. I mean, was there a point where like Hufid made the first move of being vulnerable, if that's like even a thing? Like, would you say that like one of you kind of came forward and was just like, I want this to change, or was it like a subconscious thing that you guys kind of came together?
I think me.
I think
I told you about high school and some of those particularly lonely times. I think I would have shared it. Maybe it goes back to your thing about leading. I
think it started even earlier than that, though. I think just having even you talked, I feel like, more about your personal life once you got to college. I think because you were a few years ahead of me, you kind of escaped the bubble of where we grew up quicker. And so while you got those things, that's also why I got a lot of these things at a younger age, because it was happening at the same time, but there's a 3-year gap in between us, right? So when you started talking more about your personal life at college, which was completely unique to what you had in Hinsdale, then that was kind of the point where I was like, oh, okay, it's okay to do that. Okay, let me share then what I've been going through too.
Perfect. So in general, I would love to talk about your religion, how it played a role in your life, and then maybe we can get into like the lack of representation of maybe Christian South Indians.
Yeah. Sure, I can start on that first part. Religion has also been an interesting journey, but it's something that has been so close to our hearts forever. Our family, where we come from in India, is just a very religious place, and that carried over when they immigrated to America. Religion is, I like to, when I tell my friends, because I feel like they don't even understand how important and how big it is in our family, I say like, it's literally everything.
Yeah.
Like, it's the most important thing. So I think we grew up in that. We grew up going to church every Sunday. We grew up at, every week, every other week, going to some grandparent's house for the prayer meeting. And, just even as simple as our versions of parties with families always started with prayer and some sort of song, right? Reading the Bible too, right? It was in everything that we did. So that being said, I had an interesting relationship with it. I never was as religious as I would say as I am today. I think I need to have my own journey to reach where I am, because I kind of was more or less I was a passive Christian, I would say. I kind of did the steps. I did it because my parents were telling me go to church, so I went. But I never really connected on a personal level. And I like to say, the other good thing, I talked about the one good thing that happened that junior year was me getting more into music production. I would say the other great thing that happened is me getting more in touch with my religion.
Yeah.
I use, people have different ways, people use therapy or journaling or whatever. For me, I use religion, prayer specifically, as the most therapeutic thing I can do. That's the best way for me to kind of deal with fluctuations in my mental health. So whenever I'm going through a stressful situation, I just, I sit down and I pray. Honestly, I walk through life and I'm constantly praying. And I feel like that really started junior year, because it was a realization I had after we switched churches and I really got involved in that church. And it's one of those things where I'd been dealing with intense loneliness, and then I realized, wait, I'm not alone at all, because God's always there for me, right? And so kind of rewiring my mind to just recognize that even if you feel alone and on earth in your own space, that there is always someone there that you can talk to. And that's still how I walk through life. If there is ever a moment where I'm feeling alone, feeling tired, I just send my thoughts, prayers up towards God.
It's like take them from me.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Really take the wheel. That's I really resonate with that.
Yeah.
How about your experience?
It's so similar. Like, cannot even emphasize enough how deeply religious we were raised.
Yeah.
Like multiple pastors in the immediate family, even faith was everything, and faith is everything, to the point even today, our parents, would remind us that is the most important thing, no matter everything we actually do aspire to pursue in a more worldly way of success or education and things that they do encourage in us, but they never let it be mistaken what is most important in their eyes. And so that is really how we were raised. It was first in life. But I had a similar process, especially going away to college. You're now able to make your own decisions. So my church attendance that first year, maybe into that second year of college, was terrible. I got really lazy, complacent, and I never would say that I stopped believing. I mean, faith was so core, but my practice of it was lacking. And I think it took a couple experiences, a couple of those relationships even, where it felt like I was taken even farther away. And I feel like sometimes you hit experiences where your distance from your faith gets into a danger zone and an alarm goes off. It was always, I was starting to sort of drift away in my practice. I wasn't being a great Christian by any means. And then there came a few times where I actually did feel like my heart was drifting a bit, and then my inner faith was starting to lose its footing a little bit. And then there was a wake-up call there, I think. And that happened probably toward the end of the pandemic. I think both of us started getting more active in our church. I returned back to what my daily practice is now, which is, a Bible, chapter every night. Just trying to make a habit out of it. And I still miss a lot of days, it happens. But I think faith has been something that I think we both have trained for ourselves and reminded ourselves of just how much it does matter to us.
Yes.
And it ties back to mental and emotional health. There's a huge role that it plays in keeping a positive mindset, I think.
So what if people were raised in a household where it's like harder to keep your faith because of like how strict or or
Yeah.
So like, did you feel like, your upbringing sounds a lot like mine, where it was just like super religious, and,
Yes.
like, everything is, your parents are really involved in it, and that really helps.
Yeah.
And when they like are really positive about religion,
Yeah.
then it creates a really great impact on you.
Yeah.
But there are some people who have really strict parents and still have their faith together, or people.
Yeah.
And there's so many different ways that this could go.
Yeah.
So like, what do you feel like allowed you to continue practicing your faith in your adulthood?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel, for me, even though we were raised so religious, I think what did it for me is just having that kind of that space, that autonomy to do it myself, to figure it out on my own go. I think it's really easy to get trapped in a world where you're just doing what your parents say, and whether you like it or you resent it, it's almost like the religion is their aspect. You don't really take that into your own identity. But then it was time, when I stepped away, going into, in high school, and especially as I've been in college, when you're away and you don't have someone forcing you, waking you up in the morning and say, hey, time to go to church, or saying like, hey, did you pray this morning? Did you remember to do that? As we have that at home, right? For that, it's something that I just needed to develop in myself. And I think I developed it because I felt like there was something missing in my life. I felt this huge hole in my heart. Even when I started getting more friends, and I got these great friendships and great relationships around me, and everything was going well with the business, even despite when all of that was looking up, I still felt something, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then I started really getting more, reading a chapter from the Bible a day, getting, praying every day, and I was like, okay, now I'm really feeling fulfilled.
Yeah.
Amazing answer. All right, so my last question, the last and final question of today's interview. What is your duty, and what is your duty to your culture?
Yeah.
As a side note, we can talk about the duty to your culture also just being representation of Malayalis in
sure.
media. So
Yeah.
we want to bring that into.
Yeah, we can work it
Okay,
in.
so, so what is your duty?
I think for me, it is to create platforms and spaces that empower others. I think culturally speaking, now our focus is on the South Asian community. We have personal interest, I think, in wanting to represent even more granular the South Indian community, the Malu community, the Malu Christian community. There's, we come from a minority's minority, and I think that affects a lot of how we see the world and even see our community, this broader South Asian community, honestly. But also a lot of our work, even beyond this current company that we're building, has been pretty consistently about empowerment. A lot of the work that we did on our campuses, in past community service work and things that we've built together has always been about a platform of serving. And I think that comes a lot from our family. I think about a grandfather of mine, particularly that actually I never met. He passed the year before I was born, but I'm named after him. And he was a pastor, and he was known for just incredible, almost silly generosity. Like, I don't have it in my pocket, and I'm still giving it to you. And I think we've always carried that that duty. And I think often duty can be inspired by our past and our generations above us. And there's a real feeling I think we have to serve and create opportunities for others who might not have it. And in our most recent work and in a certain passion walk that we're on right now, it primarily centers around our cultural community.
Amazing. What about you? What do you feel like your duty is?
I think given the nature, it's of course very, very similar, because we do come from everything we've done has surrounded itself in service, like you said. I would point to our parents, especially, just living. I love the theme of duty, because we always describe them as both living very dutiful lives.
Yeah. And
honestly being a reason that they came together and bonded so well, because they were that for each of their own families. And I think that's exactly what some of those values that they instilled in us. We knew that we always wanted to help people, be kind to people, use our voices to empower, like you said. So, everything that we're doing is for our culture. It's for the time being, of course, but, I always say that if we get to the end of our lives and what we have done, it's even if it's a success in our lifetime, if we get artist success, if our business does well, if it doesn't live on past us, I would have seen it as a failure. Because I think what we're doing is so much for future generations as well. It's so we don't have to have the experience of growing up in an all white community, but then also going home to TV and not seeing anyone that looks like us, right? It's so people know that they have endless opportunities of what they can be because they're seeing it there. Honestly, I always take it one further and saying we're trying to change our representation in America's pop culture, and I think we're trying to make brown cool. I think that's something that often is not we're not thought of. Our community is not thought of as a cool culture, whatever that means. But that's what we're trying to do. We want to create the next artist that everyone admires. We want to create the next movie star that has the main role that everyone wants to be like and is dressing up like for Halloween, right? We just want to put our culture in broader entertainment and tell these stories, so for the next generation they can grow up and it's not unique. They don't have to feel alone, right? They can see our color on the screen and they know that that's an option for them if they want it.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's perfect. Yeah.